Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I'm Don Irvine, joined by co-host Brian McNichol.
Good morning. Hello, deplorables, despicables, drags, chumps, Neanderthals, and those good old dog-faced pony soldiers.
That's right. All right. So, I was thinking about this before. Just, I only talk you. I probably ask you this every year, and I don't remember the answer every year, which is, Black Friday and stuff like that. But I guess first off is how was Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving was pretty good. It was just our little family went across the street and ate, and we were going to travel for Christmas, so we kept Thanksgiving down the down low.
So yeah, I saw that picture. Now, is that a different place you had to go to because the other place didn't have enough reservations, or did that
Right.
all get? Yeah.
Yeah. So our usual plan got thwarted, but we made it work. It was fun, and we don't, you had kids coming through these ages, like to just sit down and relax with them for a day is an achievement, right? It doesn't happen much, right? And so it was fun to get to spend some time.
Yeah, I mean, now that you've got teenagers and other things are filling the spaces in their life, and it is very difficult to keep all that together, and
Yeah,
you still have more challenges ahead.
that's right.
All right, I just did want to kind of ask. I mean, are you much of a Black Friday kind of shopper at all?
Nah, I played golf. Gotta get out of the way.
I mean, Black Friday has changed. I mean, the pandemic probably exacerbated, but we've been seeing, because of the advent of the internet and the rapid expansion, people had been buying more and more online. Amazon had really pushed it big over the last several years. Last year, you really couldn't go out and shop at many stores in too many places, so foot traffic was down. Apparently, foot traffic rebounded pretty nicely this year in the stores. They wanted to get out and they wanted to shop. They didn't want to do the online thing. There is something about, to certain products where you want to be able to pick them up, touch them, and feel them, and kind of sniff it
Yeah.
out. It's not.
And I also think there's something about getting out there that day and getting started on Christmas. You're starting to think about other people, and I mean, there's a reason that people like it, and go fight through the crowds and all that kind of stuff. I didn't make the mistake of driving home from basketball practice on the Saturday or on the Friday through Tyson's Corner, right? That was quite. I can attest that there's some traffic back in the stores because there was traffic on the road. But it was good to see. I'm glad people do it. I'm not much of a shopper on any day of the year. But to see that people are back to embracing it and giving gifts and going to stores, I think is good. I think it's a positive for the country.
I do look back on my younger self and the times that I dragged my kids out of bed early in the morning, and we would stand in line at different places. And when they were old enough to drive, we've split the duties. And it's like, you go here and I'll go there, or whatever. Two of us here, two of them over there, to try to get in on those doorbusters. But as I was saying at the beginning, because of the changing nature of things, I don't recall, and I don't get a newspaper at my house except for the Journal. But it used to be, on Thanksgiving, you'd get, you normally Wednesday or Thursday, depending upon what was going on when the stores were going to open, you would get a big fat Washington Post, but thick, stack of circulars about all the Black Friday deals and the doorbusters, at 4 a.m., the first 50 people can buy this or get this or whatever. I didn't, not getting the newspaper, I don't know that this was really occurring because it just seemed like this year that everything was being stretched over the entire month anyway.
Well, there was a big one. I do get it. I get the Post, and it came on Wednesday though, which is kind of telling itself because what that means is like, used to be it came on Thursday because they could be confident there was no Black Friday shopping before Friday, right? But now that's people jumping the gun in all kind of different ways. So the big day, it was like the Sunday paper with the special part just for ads, right? It was right. That it was there, and it was not as big as I've seen it in the past, but it was pretty healthy. So it's a good sign.
Well, that's probably good that retail is back in a lot of ways. Things are once again we're getting closer to where we were in 2019. We're not all the way back there, based on all the it's interesting as I listen to the news stories about Black Friday, how many companies now are out there that they have all kinds of cameras and sensors apparently in malls and places like this that they are basically gathering all this information and then they turn out. I'm sure the newspapers or whatever these media outlets are paying money to get a hold of that data so they can report back to their viewers and readers and things like that. But 15, 20 years ago, I don't remember, any of this kind of thing happening. Technology has gotten to the point where they're probably very unobtrusive, and just a lot of different things that happen when we enter a store, enter a mall, are occurring without our knowledge anymore, in terms of gathering of the foot traffic and things like that. And they're tied into all kinds of cash registers, point of sale things, so they can get feedback and they can give a fairly accurate idea of how much money was spent, in stores and online. And it's pretty phenomenal as to how things have gone. I don't, like I said.
I want to say something before you go off. That must work, or they wouldn't spend all this money on it, right?
Yeah,
but I think it limits your thinking. Because if you stand there and try to detect everything I like and only show me things I like, I've already expressed that I like. How do I learn to like anything else, right? Because you're like going to shove everything. Anytime I look favorably upon something, you're going to push a ton of that at me. You're not, there's opportunity cost. There, right? If you're pushing that, you're not pushing anything else. You're not growing my list of things I like at all, right? You're just catering to what I've already said. And I think, there's a lot of places in society. It's like, cable news. What does cable news do? Does it really give you news? Well, sometimes, right? But most of the time, what it does is confirm your biases, right? It makes you, whichever side you like, it tells you, yeah, you're right to like that side. Those other people are scumbags, right? Which, I mean, it's useless. It's useful, I guess. There's some of the data they give you, but, the fact is, you don't learn any understanding, and what you do learn is there's a dichotomy. There's a left and right approach, and there's no middle ground. And there's no way forward, right? So, to some extent, it's good that they know all this stuff about us, but to some extent, it's putting us in boxes that limit our access to each other and to solutions.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I don't know the extent of all the technology in every single store or wherever, but I mean, I can see that if that there's probably going to be a point. I mean, because we see this online and other places where people are concerned about their privacy. And I mean, you're in a public place, you're in a store, you willingly chose to go there. But, are you comfortable with the store or the mall basically tracking your movements and kind of knowing everything about you, like that? I mean, what was what was that Tom Cruise movie? Was it Vanilla Sky or something like that? I can't remember what was that darn thing? I can't remember. Anyway, the movie that tracked, every time he would walk by like an electronic billboard, it would say his name and would just feed him products and stuff like that, and all of this stuff. I mean, that whole futuristic type of thing. We're somewhat there because we're on Facebook. If we click an ad on Facebook, we are going to get more of those kinds of ads every time we show an interest in anything. Even it just kind of takes us down that path. But then I think, to some part of your point, as a result of that, it won't always show you other things that you might be interested in, because it's not saying, okay, you're interested in this, we're going to give you like the next 15 ads are going to be like this, and it just takes you down that path rather than kind of giving you the broader base of things. I'm sure I am missing out on a ton of stuff out there.
Yeah, it's like my one friend, his daughter got into UVA law school. I mean, he's on Facebook and he gets a text from her saying, "Dad, guess what? I got into UVA law school." And he looks at his computer, and an ad, literally the place where an ad is, literally the old ad goes out and a new ad comes in for, guess what? University of Virginia sweaters and shirts and stuff. Right? I mean, the guy's like, whoa, right? That was fast. I got the text
Yeah, no,
a minute ago, and they already have like all talked and decided to give me a bunch of UVA stuff.
yeah, I know. I can't remember exact details. It kind of reminds me, like one of my friends on Facebook. I think he said he was in a conversation with somebody about something, and the next thing he knows, the next ad he sees on Facebook was basically about that topic or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's coming to you so instantaneously. It's mind blowing. You don't even have time to think about it. It's just like, okay, but I mean, that's all smart marketing. If you buy into that and you go ahead and do it, it just reinforces that the data that they are collecting works, and they're going to go, okay, hey, look, my daughter's in UV in law school. Yeah, sure. I want to buy some Wahoo stuff and whatever, and do that, and the university will profit by that. So
Yeah.
it's kind of amazing where we're going. All right, on to other news. So big news probably is this Omicron variant that kind of at least seemed to have caught the stock market by surprise on Friday. South Africa is where they've seemed to have detected most of it. Europe is starting to tighten down, their travel restrictions. The U.S. looks like they're going to look at international travelers a little more tightly, and things like that. Is this something to get worried about? Because here, once again, or is this just kind of like, okay, look, I think you and I have talked about this. I mean, we understand that with COVID, we're just going to have to live with this, and it's going to have various forms. So, I know. I keep my eye on it, but I'm not like I'm not going to get apoplectic about it.
Well, I think it's the key out. I mean, the dim-witted people running the country right now will never do this because it makes too much sense. And they can only, part of the problem is, all the solutions that the Biden administration has offered to this come out of the same box, right? And it's a very narrow box, and it says, vax, restrict, require, mandate, force, and the answer to every question is more and more and more vaxes and so forth, right? It's not working. We have, twice as many cases this year as we had last year when we didn't have a vax. It's not twice as many. It's not quite twice as many, but it's not far from it. You have Vermont, which is one of the most vax states in the nation. Their all-cause deaths are 214% of what they were last year, right? That's a big jump. England's freaking out about it being up 10, 12%. 214% is a lot more. And all this stuff, but it's like, hey, our only way out of this is more vaxes. Well, here's one where the way out of it is not to vax. It appears to be mild. No one's died or even come close to dying of it. So, I mean, this is the one, go get it and get your immunity and move on. And you're free of all the vax and the cycles and all that kind of stuff. But that's not what's going to happen, right? They're going to, we got to lock down and this thing's terrible. And, we've given it a scary name and, everyone run and be in fear again, right? That's not what this is. This is a way out. It is an extremely mild variant. They say it makes you feel weird, but it doesn't last long and it doesn't make you very sick, right? And so I can tell you from having had original non-variant COVID that, yeah, it's a weird sickness. It's not anything you've been sick with before. So, but its power is only its power, right? It ends pretty quickly for most people and they move on. And, this is one where if you need therapeutics, take your therapeutics, but otherwise you're probably just going to be, the course of action is lay in bed for a day or two and then get up and go back about your life free of this forever. So, it offers hope. It offers a way out of this. So, it'll be interesting to see. And also, there was about 2 days before we started hearing about this Omicron, we heard that, wow, it's a miracle in Africa. The vaccination rate is about 5 or 6%, and they have by far the least problems with COVID in the world. So how can that be? If the vaccines are the answer, why does the people where almost no one's taking the vax, the safest one? And the vaccine, and I think the Moderna guy has said this too, who's agreed to this, that the vaccine has no effect on this. It's not taking another vaccine is not going to protect you from it. It's, having been vaccinated is not going to protect you from it. This is kind of steps outside what the vax can help with.
Yeah, based on what they know and everything like this. I know that the naming convention right now is from the Greek alphabet and all this stuff, but I want to propose that what they should have done is they should have just used some kind of China variation. They could have said like Wuhan 1 or Xi 1 or name one after
Well, they actually skipped part of the Chinese alphabet because there's a letter that's XI, which is his name, how we spell his name, right? So like, we don't want to confuse people. It's like, well, I'm not sure how confusing it would be, but that's what they did.
I want to call it a spade what it is. Spade, here is like, if it emanated from China, it should have China all over it in some variation. And here, it's a constant reminder of who's responsible.
Who's responsible? That's right. Yeah. Trump was right about that.
Yeah. So it's and I think this is somewhat of another test for Biden, who's been flailing about. How's he going to handle this? I mean, you just mentioned this thing, lockdowns, more restrictions, and things like that. We know what happens, when that cares. We're what, a year and a half, plus into this whole, COVID deal. We have a pretty good idea of how to handle things, what kind of works and what doesn't work in terms of the economy and other things like this. But the Democrats, I mean, their knee-jerk reaction is like, everybody's got to mask up, vax up, close down, stay at home, all this stuff.
Right. And we need to spend $1 zillion of government money to make everybody whole over it. It's like, no, you don't. None of that is true.
Well, see, and that this is another thing I want to ask you too. It's like, in terms of the way the Democrats react to this, is that, say this thing, continues to be a story for the next several weeks or a couple of months or whatever, for whatever reason, does this give the Democrats, the Biden administration, an opportunity to go ahead and impose their will on us? Plus, what you just mentioned here is just an excuse to say, okay, we got to get the spending packages through. We got to do all this. We got, here's another stimulus package, and we're going to save America by doing this, which will be totally unnecessary in my opinion. But my nefarious mind starts to think like, continues just long enough, they may be able to convince enough people that, we got to take all these drastic measures, which is ridiculous.
Right. I don't think that the Build Back Better bill is going to pass this year. It may pass next year, but I don't think it's going to pass this year. I think Manchin has made up his mind, and I don't know that any aspect of the COVID story will change it. His opposition doesn't really have to do with COVID. So, what happens in the COVID markets, which is essentially what it's become, is kind of immaterial to that. So, and I think Sinema is the same way. And I think that, AOC said, maybe we talked about this last week, but AOC said, Manchin and Sinema are out front, right? They're saying they don't want to vote for this bill. But there's 8 or 9 other Democrats hiding behind them who are like, I'm not going to come out and say I don't want to vote for the bill, but I don't want to vote for the bill. So, I don't think you can argue anymore, certainly not very persuasively, that these big stimulus packages actually do anything for the economy, right? I mean, we've had 2. There's been a lot of money that haven't, they're not making much difference. So, so I don't know. I don't think, I don't know that this is going to push those bills through.
I wasn't necessarily saying that it was going to push these bills through, because I think they're under different conditions. And I think, we both know that this Build Back Better plan is in deep trouble. Manchin
on a lot of fronts.
Yeah. Manchin standing firm is, one of the huge roadblocks for them, but the Democrats aren't getting any traction on this. They can't convince anyone for the most part. The public doesn't seem to be convinced that this is something that we need or will do any good at this point. And the Democrats, they're by fighting with amongst themselves, they don't help it. I mean, they're kind of fractured on a lot of these things. So this, it's going to sit out there, but it's going to sit out for a while. But I do want to, as part of this though, is that, how important is this bill related to the debt ceiling, or are we going to are they going to kick the can down the road and just basically on the debt ceiling for now while they still try to deal with these other issues?
Well, debt ceiling is kind of a fraught issue that the Republicans can push it and get some concessions for it. Maybe just an agreement to not worry about Build Back Better for a while, to extend it. And then you have to have a tax extenders. What are you going to do about your, wind production tax credit and all that stuff at the end of the year? A lot of those things run out at the end of the year and they have to be extended every year. So, those two things are not done. I think we reach the debt ceiling again 2 weeks from today. So on the 15th. So that's how much time they have to work with to get that done without it threatening shutting down the government. You don't want to get in a situation where Republicans are blamed for shutting down the government, where, hey, it's just a quick, measure to keep things going and you guys stood in the way. It's like, if you're going to do this, you're going to have some principle to stand on. It's not going to be you're not going to be able to just bully this through. So, they can hold out to force some changes on stuff, but there's a point where, if the country starts to look at Republicans as standing in the way of progress, you could blow your huge lead, and it's a big and widening league in the midterms.
Yeah, so we'll have to kind of wait and see. I mean, that's probably the biggest issue for them is on the debt limit more than anything else. And we are,
and the tax extenders. I mean, that's always a fight at the end of the year.
Right, and we're running. We run into this whole situation too, where we're at. It's December 1. I mean, first of all, I think it's December already. It's like, what happened to my year? Christmas is in just a little over 3 weeks. That's amazing. But, they're running into holidays and they're not going to have that many more working days to really deal with a lot of these things. And so they got to do this. That's why I think, the calendar definitely works against Build Back Better. I mean, it just, there's a lack of interest. The Democrats don't have the votes. I think that's it. And we've talked about this time and time again, as we keep going down every week, we go through this, we're a week closer to the 2022 elections. And the Democrats get increasingly worried about what that looks like for them, and it doesn't get any better. And this Build Back Better plan is not something that gets them over the hump for 2022. It's actually really the opposite. So anybody in those the swing districts, very competitive areas, if you're a Democrat, I think you got to say, I don't see where this helps me. And you can't use Joe Biden because Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, they're not going to really get you votes in swing districts and competitive districts. They're wildly unpopular, based on the polling. So the Democrats have got a huge problem, at least in the House of Representatives next year, and then they face there are other battles in the Senate as well. But the House, it looks a little more Republican every week that I look at this thing.
Yeah, so the generic ballot is the most favorable to Republicans it's been since they created the generic ballot. It is the record-setting most pro-Republican generic ballot ever, right? And so, the Democrats are trapped in some old thinking, which will make them hard to get out of the box they're in. Like you have to think about Hillary Clinton came out and said, we don't appreciate all that Joe Biden's done. He's pushed through 2 pieces of legislation. Woo, right? He spent a lot of money that did not help, right? With Congress that's all his party. He got 2 things over the finish line that he shouldn't have, one of them he shouldn't have gotten over the finish line. It spends 8%. It's an infrastructure bill that spends 92% of the money on something besides infrastructure. And so he's got, that was his thing. And, the Democrats' thing is, if we pass a handout bill, we've solved the problem. The problem of inflation is solved because we passed a handout bill, right? The problem of infrastructure is solved. The bridges are now all repaired and working great, and as are the tunnels and the highways and the internet and all that stuff. It's all fixed because, hey, we passed a bill. All right. We're not checking on who gets that money and for what and how efficiently it's spent, because, hey, we passed the bill. So, that's where they are. So they're thinking, if you're a hammer, every problem looks like a nail, right? And so every problem looks to them like something that needs to, a big spending bill attached to it. So, until they can get out of that way of thinking, they're kind of trapped because, you kind of can't.
Yeah, no, I mean, it amazes me what these kind of things. I mean, Hillary, okay. I mean, she is yesterday's news to me. I mean, but she's still out there. She still gets interviewed occasionally and things like this. But she comes out and she says something like this. It's like, really, I mean, this is the best you can do. This is how you're trying to defend Joe Biden and praise him and say, Americans don't really appreciate all that he has done for us by talking about these spending bills and this kind of thing. I mean, and then and obviously, which feeds their interest, is completely ignoring the fact that there have been multiple failures, in just 10 plus months, and ignoring all of that, and not talking about his low poll numbers or Kamala's even lower poll numbers and things like that. I mean, Maddow and Hillary Clinton were probably made for each other for those interviews and that type of thing. But it kind of goes back even to your point of at the beginning. These are cable news networks like that. They are just basically feeding you what you want to hear and what you know or what you believe. Right? They're not really teaching you anything new. They're just helping you, with your own biases.
Confirming your biases, yeah.
Right? So I think that's very, very much spelled out in all of that in terms of what they do. I did, back to the vaccine, back to all the mandates and all this and the Omicron and things like this. So there was this report that Moderna said that, it would have taken 90 days maybe to create a vaccine for this. And then I guess the FDA narrowly approved a drug, a Merck drug for COVID. Now, it wasn't to address this because this is so new. And this thing is called, what is this? Molnupiravir. I mean, it was 13-10 on the vote, so it'll probably get full approval and whatever and all this stuff like this. I don't recall that drug was overly effective, but it was somewhat effective, and I think that's why
there's some bad side effects to it too.
Yeah,
I think that's why you have 10 votes against. So the side effects profile is really bad on it. Yeah, as it is on all the vaccines. As we're starting to find that, the whole idea was, I wouldn't do it anymore. If you've done it, you've done it. But I wouldn't be re-upping, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, based on, I mean, it has some effectiveness, but it's almost like it's going to be feeding right to those people that are very desperate. I saw some headline story yesterday about parents of children under 5 that are desperately awaiting approval for vaccines for their kids. I'm like, we talked about this 5 to 11-year-old vaccine stuff. You keep going younger and younger. I'm just like, what is the point?
Right.
Like, what is the point of doing this? The media, the liberals, they have convinced these parents that this is going to solve the problem.
It's the only way out, right? And they're like, I can't take them anywhere. I can't do this. And what we need to remove is whatever's stopping you from taking anywhere, not that you go take a 5-year-old kid who has virtually no chance of dying of this and give them these vaccines, which do have a lot of potential problems.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that when you're talking about young children, the risks of a vaccine, especially as new as everything is much too high, to risk it. I mean, if I was the parent of someone in that age range, I'm like, no way, I'm not doing that. That's not going to happen.
Way.
Yeah. I mean, how was Thanksgiving somewhat impacted? I mean, there were stories about people who were having Thanksgiving get-togethers, but they were actually making their guests take a COVID test beforehand before allowing to be entered. It's like, why bother holding the party then? It's like, you're going to who wants to go to a party where you've got to take a test?
Yeah. You got to be kidding me, right? I mean, it's like, think about it is like, it's not at all supported by science. It's not, you can't say, oh, trust the science. This is not about science. This is hoodoo, right? This is nothing to do with that. And so, but you've got fear whipped up, and you've got these networks that I don't know if they're profiting because, I guess it looks like CNN is not profiting. MSNBC is milking off of NBC, and actually their sports, which does make money, pushing fear, pushing paranoia, right? And people are going to die because of it, because they're taking things they don't need to take, putting stuff in their body that they should not be putting in their body.
Yeah, I mean, and I have this big problem with the mask mandates. Just it drives me absolutely crazy, because I keep thinking, I always go back and refer back to my gym experiences. So we're supposed to be masked in the gym, but several of us kind of have kind of that unwritten rule where if we're on the elliptical, we take our mask off so we can actually breathe and do that. And nobody ever complains. I mean, this is for the morning group. No one, there's a handful of people there. But when the mask mandate was lifted for a period of time at the gym, there's nothing. I heard no effect of having all those unmasked, sweaty people, and that were machine to machine next to each other, or passing by each other and stuff like that. I heard nothing that ever happened to them, that none of them getting sick from COVID or anything like this. So like putting the mask back on is going to make a big difference. It's like, this is such foolhardiness on this that.
Hey, look, so when, the late of June of 2020, right? I started back in basketball, right? I had COVID in May. I waited a couple of weeks, and we started practicing and getting in tournaments. And so all the tournaments, we ended up playing 9 tournaments. We played all over the country because it was hard to find competition here, right? Every one of those tournaments had this elaborate process for contact tracing. So if anybody in this gym gets COVID, within the time where you would need to worry about it, we will inform you. Not one of those 9 tournaments informed us of anything, right? I mean, and that was at the height of no vax COVID, right? The highest numbers they ever had and no vaccine. And no one ever informed us that we'd come in contact or had anything to worry about. So, right. I mean, I just don't, I think the whole thing has been a big scam. I
mean, we mentioned professional sports or even college sports. I mean, between now having fans back in the stands, but these, but the leagues, the professional leagues have all these protocols in place, right? And the contact tracing and other things like this. But, I haven't seen any proof. I haven't heard anybody getting, sick from COVID that's a professional athlete that's been out for months or whatever. They have to go through this thing where they may have to be off for a week or two because of the tracing, or they were tested positive or whatever the rules are, and all this stuff like that. I guess if you get a second negative test, you're okay or something like that. But you look at the effect it's had on professional sports, where players can't play. All of a sudden you've lost 3 or 4 players, sometimes key players for this.
The Cowboys have 8 people now,
including the coach, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and what is that doing? What use is that?
Right. That's right. You're not, because once you're to that stage, you're not contagious anymore. Even if you ever were contagious, right? Because most people who get COVID are not contagious. Don't give it to anyone. Right. It's only a few of us who do. The problem is we don't know which, and those people give it to a lot of people. Right. They're high value vectors. So, we're never going to get past it.
Yeah. I just don't quite understand all of this. It's just that it seems that it's going to be a part of our life forever.
It's a part of our life until we elect a Republican president.
Maybe that is the answer.
With Trump or DeSantis or whoever it is, it's in there, right? That it'll be ended as a part of our life in fairly short order, because they're willing to, they're not running this thing for the sake of Moderna like the Democrats are.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, we need a Republican, Congress, Republican Senate to kind of to
check the excesses,
right? Yeah,
I guess you saw some of the excesses got checked by the courts yesterday.
Yes, and then we can talk about that. Yeah,
stayed COVID mandates. So I believe it all across the country now. No COVID mandates for private sector. No COVID mandates for healthcare sector. And there was one more, but I think they're all three enjoined all across the country now. So, at least we have started to make some progress in the courts. And if you go read those court filings, what you're starting to see is that the courts, one of these was in the Ninth Circuit, and it was out in California. San Diego's school district was going to require all students to be vaccinated. And a court halted that. And what they said is, you haven't proven that this is that big a problem or that your solution works, which is, it's kind of big that a court is saying, we're looking at your evidence, buddy, and we're not seeing it. So I think that's part of it is interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean that's just, those are just kind of, to me, those are definitely smackdowns of the Biden administration and their overreach.
Yeah, and they're terrible lawyers, right? The other one is, they want to go after Steve Bannon. And I'll tell you what, I think that Joe Biden will be done being president before Steve Bannon ever faces sentencing from a judge.
That could very well be. Matter of fact, you remember how I told you, I think a few weeks ago, like one of these pictures I took of Bannon at a Heritage, when we had a bloggers briefing thing years ago, appeared in like the Daily Mail online or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think about 2 days after that, it happened again in 2 more publications. I got an alert, and I'm like, so what the heck is this? And I look, and it's a couple more photo credits from a couple more articles on Bannon. So it's funny, who knew that I was going to be one of those guys that would take a picture of a guy who's almost like Howard Hughes in terms of trying to get a picture of him, and it would just, because I put it up for for public consumption, there's no copyright on it or whatever. When they search, they look around, they find these these free pictures are like, okay, well, that's a halfway decent picture of Bannon. We got to use it because we have, we're not going to pay $100 or whatever it is, or to use it otherwise.
Right.
So it's kind of funny how Steve Bannon. I should have done something. I could have made some money off of Steve.
That's right. Maybe he'll do it for you again. Pose for a picture.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I missed the boat on that and everything like this. Okay, now our wonderful Pete Buttigieg, who he was interviewed.
This can't not laugh.
Yeah, he's interviewed. I mean, it's not. He talks about, families will never have to worry about gas prices again if you're buying an EV, right? And I mean, this is something he interviewed. This is not this is not just like Fox News reporting it. I mean, The Hill reported on, other publications reported, and they're like, Snopes, I think, even said, yes, he did say this, right? I mean, as much as I hate Snopes, even Snopes had to, even said that, yes, he did say it. And I'm looking at this thing, I'm reading a little bit of this interview. Yeah. And one of the other things he said about this is just like, this is great. EVs are great for people who live in rural areas. This is made for them. And maybe it's just me, but my first thought is like, if you live in a rural area, except for charging at your home, where else are you going to be charging your car?
Right. And all your drives are long drives, right? You don't have any short drives if you live in a rural area, right?
Yeah, I mean, by definition, it almost seems like rural area means you are out in the boonies.
Grocery store is not 2 blocks away; it's 10 miles away or whatever, right?
Right, and
every
you
trip
elected
is
to
a
live
long
there
trip
because you wanted to be out in nature. You wanted to be away. You didn't want the crowded suburbs or whatever. But EVs, they have limited mileage, and lots of things impact that. If it's hot outside, you run your air conditioning, you're going to use up more power. If it's cold outside,
that's right,
you use your heat, it's going to use more power. So
right, and also, there's not as much capacity in the country, right? So right. I mean, there's no reason to have huge, you don't have the same amount of power plants, in Kansas as you do in New York per land area, right? Because you got a lot more people using power. So if the people in the country decide they're going to all buy electric cars, you're going to need a lot more power capacity in the country, or else all those other things you talk about, air conditionings and heaters and microwaves and all that won't be working, right? So, yeah. I mean, it's the problem is not solved by forcing everybody into electric cars, right? The market will sort that out, and the market will probably do it in a pretty good way. that, that convenient gives everybody the most convenience and the most efficiency. But, that's nothing for government to be intervening on because they don't really understand it. And, as he decry, as he says here, electric cars don't need power. Well, okay, you don't understand where electricity comes from, right? What the heck? You know what I mean? It's like, so, every administration put some lightweights in office, right? You're rewarding competitors who had a good showing, and the people who voted for them in your party, which is the case with him. Your other guys of standing in your party, people who've allied with you over the years, endorsed you. Sessions got to be attorney general because he was the very first person in Congress to say he would vote for Trump. So, and that was a horrible pick, right? So they all come in with some lightweights, Sessions, Tom Price, Tillerson, Scott Pruitt at EPA. I mean, those were guys who had no business in those kind of jobs, right? They didn't know what they were doing, and it quickly became evident. But, this is a guy, Buttigieg, he's off of work for 4 months, holding his baby while there's a supply chain crisis, the thing he's supposed to work on. So he shows you what he thinks, right? He thinks that, like, affecting these poses is more important than doing his job, right? And so he's just affecting poses. And so you can't take these people seriously. That's why you can't take Fauci seriously anymore, right? How many things does he need to be wrong on before we say maybe he's not the guy to ask? Just repeated mistakes over and over and over. At some point you got to go in another direction.
Yeah, for me, Buttigieg, it's just like you are just nowhere near reality. Have you ever been to a rural area? Do you understand the distance? If you have a farm, you're usually going to be a fair amount of distance from the nearest town where there are any kind of services to begin with.
Right.
And if and there isn't a rural area that I know of right now that it would make any economic sense to put in an EV charging station at all to begin with.
Right.
The cost
and rural Indiana is not rural Colorado or Wyoming, or those problems are several times worse there.
Yeah, if you're in Montana and Wyoming and places like that, it's like hello. So it's just, he's so devoid of reality with this. But one of the other things that that it started to bother me about this EV thing too was that the thought occurred to me that our transportation trust funds have been built around gas taxes. That's been a big funder of that. Federal gas taxes, local gas taxes, state gas taxes, and things like that. So what's been happening, over the years is that those, beyond the fact that the politicians always raid those funds, raid the transportation trust fund for other things anyway, is that if people are driving EVs, they are then now using less gasoline. There's less tax money revenue coming in off of that to begin with. The more of this we get, it's like, what's the government's solution? What's their thing? Does that mean that's more taxpayer dollars are going to be now funding this? We're going to see more infrastructure type of thing bills because we're going to go all EV, around there. That it's not really going to be paid by the per user per se at this point.
Well, think about it this way. So, when I was at CEI, they were all like, hey, gas taxes, that's good because that's a user fee, right? The people driving on the roads are paying to keep up the roads. Like, okay, I don't really agree with that. I think everybody benefits from the roads, but, I can see what they're saying, right? Okay. Who pays, how do the electric car people pay their user fee? Their car is still rolling over that highway, causing whatever damage each car causes to a highway, right? But they're not now paying for it. They're paying, their tax stream goes into other stuff. And let me tell you, they don't care that this is going to make things hard on gas drivers. They're absolutely out to get cars off the road. So, the fact that it makes it harder to drive it's a feature as far as the Democrats are concerned. It's not a bug.
Yeah, I mean, plus the fact that we've got, we're these EVs. Part of the push for this too is that more large government subsidies are coming down the pike for this. Plus the dispute about the part, I guess it's in the Build Back Better bill somewhere, that where the union shops, if you buy a union made EV, you get a bigger tax credit than if you buy a non-union EV. I was like,
Right.
this is
Yeah.
absolutely insane.
Yeah. What are you
You know,
doing? What does that
and
mean?
I think Virginia may have been one. There was at least one state that, trying to offset some of the loss of the gas tax, they started a part of a registration fee was now was for EVs, a special EV assessment, because they were trying to figure out how much money in gas tax revenue they were losing for. But I think that there's a huge potential problem in that, is that I don't think people think about gas taxes. I certainly do not think about gas taxes when I'm at the pump. Okay. I just see the price at the pump, and I don't even remember what the breakdown is between state and federal gas taxes on every gallon of gas I pump. It just because it's not broken down on the pump. However, if you're starting to charge 300, 400, 500, whatever the thing may be, especially as more EVs hit the road, and those people are paying that bill once a year or whatever with their registration or whatever it is every 2 years, that's going to, psychologically, people are going to say, whoa, wait a minute. It's like, why are you charging me all this money just because I thought I was doing good by driving an EV, and now you're charging me $500 a year to drive my EV? What's all that about? I think that's a political nightmare for them potentially down the line.
Well, it's also it's a carbon tax, right? Which is that's not a good idea either. If they start saying, okay, here's your carbon footprint and here's what you owe for it, that you can't get a more economy, civilization crushing measure than that.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Who knows? Maybe there'll be a black market in carbon credits for EVs. It's like, here, I'll buy this credit and I can use it to pay my fee to the state of Virginia or Maryland or wherever it may be or something. I don't know. That's there was an article in the Journal the other day about how the rental car fleets are. Hertz made a big commitment to EVs, and others are looking at that as well. But I kind of wonder, it's like, how much are they going to wind up charging for you to rent an EV? And it's not, and exactly how does all that work? Are you supposed to return the car fully charged, or do you get charged? Right. There's just those little things that we're used to. If you return your car with a full tank of gas, you're just paying the rental fee and the taxes. If you come up short, you're paying an exorbitant rate for them to top off the tank and get it back to full or whatever. But how does that exactly work with EVs? And until, once again, EV charging stations become more ubiquitous, if you rent an EV, it seems like you're going to be pretty limited to where you go. If you're a tourist and you're staying at a hotel, I don't recall any hotels right now having EV charging stations for your rental, right? Plus a lot of the hotels in the past had rental car desks, in the past, where they had a small fleet that they could help out the people who decide, I need to get a car for the day, and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of logistical and other things that have just not been thought out. There's been this huge push to be green, to make this thing. It's like, this is the way to save America. We're going to go green and do this, but they haven't thought all the things through.
They want to be seen as doing something, but they haven't really offered you something to do. This is their attempt at that, and it's not a good attempt.
All right, as we're running low here, I do want to ask you your opinion about this whole thing with CNN suspending Chris Cuomo yesterday. So it's indefinitely. They finally decided that after all these revelations about how much he was helping his brother, that warranted suspension. I don't know if he should ever deserve to return to the air at this point, though.
Well, I'm trying to figure out, like, what is he suspended for? What did he do? It seems to me like, he did what? Talk to other media people. Hey, go easy on my bro. I can't, if you're a journalist, you're like, thanks for your call, Chris. We're going to report what we're going to report. I appreciate your concerns and we'll make sure it's fair. But, so I'm trying to put my finger on what exactly he did that he should be kicked out of his job for. Right. I don't really get it. To tell you the truth.
I thought it also had to do with them. Maybe he was, just the amount of things on how he was trying to help his brother during the turmoil his brother was facing as governor. It's like, it was almost like he was a media liaison, or almost working for him, but still working for CNN, not really being a, now remember, objective journalist. I am saying CNN and objective journalism. It's like, I think for CNN, part of it too is just like, okay, your reputation's, not that great anyway. And then this happens and there doesn't seem to be an end to the story. And the only way you're going to put an end to the story is that you got to suspend him for now.
Right. I think he'll be back. I think the way, and also the way they talked about this was, we knew he was we understand that he was helping, and that these are unique circumstances that, you happen to have a brother who's the governor and this happened to him, but there were things that happened here that we can't allow. And so, did he misrepresent what he was doing? Did he, shade the truth in some way? That's the part that, I'm trying to get to the bottom of.
Yeah. Well, there've been a lot of criticism for him when he had interviewed his brother, and it seemed to be more palsy-walsy than journalist and governor. That type of thing. So I think that when it came to his brother, Chris probably didn't really, have a Chinese wall. He didn't really throw up a wall there. He did give his brother the benefit of the doubt, maybe more so than he should have in the end. Now here's something I didn't realize.
But that went on over months and months, right?
Right.
That's
right.
You can't allow it for months and months and then decide one day to suspend him for it, right? You had lots of chances to stop it or curb it or address it, right? And you just wait till, I don't know. I don't know. I don't get the precipitating event. My intuition is, from having read what the remarks of the executives at CNN have said about this, is that he misled them, at least some, about what he was doing, right? He wasn't quite frank about it. And I think that, he's going to pay whatever the penalty is for not being frank, and then he will come back.
Yeah. CNN ignored. People were calling for him to be suspended before, and CNN did not listen. So, I think you have a good point there too. So, this has been going on for a while, and now all of a sudden, why now? Is the situation any different in terms of what the evidence is versus then? Probably really not really, I think, in that regard. So I was listening to a podcast, and I have to ask your opinion on this, because I don't pay attention to all the little things that happen in New York. But this guy was talking about the Tappan Zee Bridge in New York, which had been renamed the Mario Cuomo Bridge.
Right.
So here's the thing: with all the stuff that goes on here with Confederate soldiers and Thomas Jefferson, and all the other things about their supposed racist histories and things like this, does Mario Cuomo, does his name stay on things like the bridges and things like that after leaving office?
There's some talk about reverting that back to Tappan Zee. I was on that bridge one time, one of the scariest moments of my life. It snowed, right? It poured snow on Thanksgiving, and I got on top of that bridge, and I start coming down on the I guess it's the Connecticut side. It gets up or right at the border of Connecticut or whatever, and I start coming down, and I hit my brakes, and nothing happened.
Oh no!
Like, stops in front of me. Whatever. And luckily people know not to stop. So no one stopped, and I didn't hit anything. But man, when you're going down a bridge and that like the brakes mean nothing to the equation, that's a scary feeling.
I hope that taught you a lesson about car maintenance or something.
Well, no, it was iced. The brake.
Oh, the iced. Okay, all right.
That's what
they would just
frozen. Stop.
Nothing would have helped in that situation. All right, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. So a few things. One is it does look like baseball's headed for a strike, or at least some period of work stoppage. It may not be even actually a period of work stoppage because it may get handled before any work is in spring training resumes, right? But it does not look like they're going to have an agreement by the time it runs out on, I believe, the 11th is when the agreement runs out. Oh, no, I think part of it is today.
It's today. Tonight at midnight. Tonight at midnight.
Right, that's right. And, of course, I guess the big news was the college football, the coaching carousel is really interesting this year, right? Lincoln Riley leaves Oklahoma to go to USC, and Brian Kelly leaves Notre Dame. I mean, can you imagine leaving Notre Dame? You get to be the coach at Notre Dame and you resign and go somewhere else, and you're being successful. It's like you're not forced out in any way. So, and it went to LSU, which enabled me to find out that he was born the same day as me. So
is he younger than you?
Huh?
How old is Brian Kelly?
He's born the same day. He's not a younger or older.
Oh, he's same exact day.
Same exact day.
Day and year. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And so it remains to be seen. LSU the mission is to get past Alabama. I'm not sure this does this. I think most of the fans realize, we can be decent, but we can't be great out of this. And it rocked Notre Dame's world, and LSU is kind of like, meh, So it remains to be seen. He could, he's about a 78% winner wherever he's been. So, if that's enough to make them happy, they'll be happy. If not, then they won't.
Well, I understand they're paying him pretty well to go there, so that's
$9.5 million.
Yeah,
Saban makes 12, so just by comparison,
he wants to bring his DC to LSU too, right? I think make him the highest paid DC there. So that would
right, and he's key to the deal because he's actually the recruiter.
Yeah. So we shall see. Well, does that I kind of wonder that too on the coaching carousel? Well, that means that Luke Fickell becomes a prime target for Notre Dame or something like that.
Right. He's a leading candidate.
Yeah.
Although they may make a run at the DC. So
yeah, that's true. I mean, we'll have to wait and see how that happens. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, so are you happy with Kelly? I mean, you didn't get Tucker. You had predicted Tucker, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see. Seriously, I mean, please prove me wrong. I'm obviously cheering for him, but
yeah,
I don't see that we moved past Saban with this. So, I mean, we're still behind them. Second place looks the same, as fifth place and eighth place and all the rest of them. You're looking at some other.
Are you telling me that Auburn doesn't give you hope after the Iron Bowl?
No. No. I mean, here's the thing. It's like this was a year when Alabama was a little bit vulnerable. They lost a game, and they barely beat us, and we struggled to get to 500. They barely beat Auburn, which struggled, which is just a little over 500. I mean, they were not, the kings of the yard the way they usually are, and all these people who were unable to take advantage of that, including Texas A&M, which beat them. That's who beat them. You need to look at like all the money you're spending on a coach because the idea is to beat Alabama, and you're not doing it. You're not even when they're at their weakest point.
Yeah. All right. That's enough sports talk. We turned this into a mini sports show at the end. All right, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us today. We appreciate it. Please always stay safe, stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not forget about it. Do not let anybody tell you otherwise. God bless America, and we will see you again